And I remember I was in Airbnb, and I remember sitting on the floor, and I had the in my mouth, and I was putting pressure on the trigger. I was ready to just end it. Prior to this, I had a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, commit. And I never understood, and I had veteran buddies who might commit sideways. And I never understood why they would do that. Because it hurts everybody around you that's still alive. Hurts everybody.
Yeah.
Until I was at that point where there was no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I was so in such extreme depression, darkness. Nobody's helping. Nowhere for me to turn for help. Yeah. Everybody's against me. And nothing I'm doing is saving me.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I have, it's called a hammerless, and I actually have it with me now. The same, and it was in my mouth, and I was putting pressure on the trigger. It went past the first detent. In other words, the safety's off. The next thing is the hammer's falling on the primer. Yeah. And my phone went off, and it lit up the room.
Wow. And
I looked down, and on my phone is that picture of my little girl. She's sorry. It's a picture of her holding my finger. We took pictures of her when she was real little, and she's looking up at Daddy. This beautiful smile on her beautiful eyes. And I looked at it. There was no message. There was no email. There was no reason for that phone to go off. And that's when I realized.
All rise.
I just want to be able to see my daughter.
Like a real man to be.
So you're just living off of his child support?
Yeah.
We've gone over so many of these cases.
Order in the court.
First, let me say welcome to the Family Court Podcast. You know, I know it's been a long time coming. You know what I mean? I saw your video last night, and you say, well, you didn't want to. So I said, you know what? When I saw that video, I said, you know what? I normally put questions together, pre-written questions that I want to ask my guests. But when I saw that video, I said, you know what? I'm going to let Bill just talk.
And I'm going to make some call outs. I'm going to ruffle some feathers, and I'm going to make some people mad. It'll be fair. I'll be very just, but it's kind of like the unspoken truth among politicians and the MRAs and FRAs. Now, I'm going to embarrass some people, and I don't care, because it's time as men we learn we have to start talking about difficult topics. We have to start really identifying where the problems are and how to get them fixed. And sometimes peer pressure, unfortunately, has to be applied. And I'm going to apply it.
You know my rant videos that we talk about?
Yeah, I said,
that's hilarious. That's great. That's great.
So
that's
I said,
awesome.
I'm gonna let him just run the show. And if I have a question, I'm gonna throw them in there, as the conversation progresses. So, but I wanted to start with this, and I think this is actually a good place to get started. Like your story, what happened to you that really brought you into this space?
Yeah. So, I never thought in a million years. You and I have had this talk.
Right.
I mean, we've had this talk, but so everybody that doesn't know, I never thought in a million years I'd be here. I didn't want to be here.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. Went through a bad divorce. I'm a victim of domestic violence. We talked. Both of us shared how we fought off suicide,
right,
and won. I mean, we're here. We won.
Right.
But then, being thrown into the family court process, I was totally unprepared for it. I thought it would be, because I'm a former federal agent, so about 10 years as a federal agent, I understood divorce court, civil court proceedings, understand rules of evidentiary value, stuff like that. I mean, it's part of our training curriculum. And my divorce attorney just looked at me one day and said, Bill, this is not civil court. It's not criminal court. This is family court. You don't understand it. And I remember just staring at her like, you just took all the gas out of my engine, And she started going through what the judge wanted to see. I'm like, how do you know this? Like, she told me, she says, Judge Dickinson here in Forsyth County, Georgia said, I don't want to hear anything bad said about the mom in my court. And I was like, it's a violation of due process, violation of my Constitution and civil rights. It's Amendment 4 violation. And I just started going on, and she went.
So the judge said that before you guys, even before the case gets started.
Wow. Oh yeah, before. Well, as we started getting into it, I brought out the fact she's had multiple affairs. She contracted an STD in the first trimester of the pregnancy.
Wow.
So this day has impacted my child.
Right.
So you guys can go look it up. There's an STD you can contract that it affects a child's eyes, and they could actually be born blind if they don't get to it in time. Didn't come out until after the birth, and she had this bloating around her abdomen that looked like it was spreading, looked like it was becoming systemic. It was spreading through her body.
Wow.
And she complained of pain, and it was hot. And I was looking at it, and I got to, you go through medical training in the military. And I was like, I don't see it. Well, it was a Wednesday, and she lifted up her shirt, and it was red, and it was spreading. I was like, wow. It's to the emergency room. And our baby wasn't, but dude, I'm talking weeks old.
Wow.
Okay. So we hustled up the emergency room. Her OB looked at it and said, MRSA, you two right away, hospital, level 2 isolated quarantine right away. They thought it was MRSA that she got from surgery. So I started taking notes, and I called an attorney, kind of paced the attorney just say, just get through it right now and take notes of everything. Take pictures of her, take pictures of the IV and everything. And I noticed when I was taking pictures, she said, quit taking pictures. Why are you taking so many notes? Stop taking notes. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Right. And so I explained it to her, and she was still apprehensive and defensive about it. And I was like, this is not making sense. What the fuck's going on? So the doctors come in and said, we're going to take it down for a CAT scan. Took it down for a CAT scan. It definitely was bad. It looked bad in the CAT. So then they come up and said, we're going to wheel you down. We're going to take fluid out or send the fluid to the lab. So I spent, I think it was 2.5 days in isolated level 2 quarantine up on the maternity ward, and it was hell. Yeah, living hell.
I can imagine.
There's nowhere to sleep for men. They got a little sitting bench. It's about this wide. They bring you a blanket and a pillow because they're all masked, and they put up a little plastic isolation drape they have to walk through prior to coming in, and they're masked and gloved and gowned, and they're covers because they don't know what it is. They don't know if it's airborne, fluid-borne, contact-borne. They don't know yet. Right. And they're brought in this little flimsy blanket and a pillow and a makeshift bassinet for the baby and formula for the baby to take. And so I'm feeding the baby, taking care of her, taking care of the baby, trying to look after myself, dead tired. Yeah. Day 2 comes around. I'm going to sleep on this little bench. And what I did is I shifted into military mode. I'm like, dude, if I can go to sleep on a C-130, I can go to sleep here. But I needed sleep. But the baby's getting up. Yeah. Less than every 4 hours, crying. She's hungry, so I got to feed her. She's in the hospital bed, IVs. They did intravenous IVs. They did what they call broad spectrum intravenous antibiotics.
What is that?
That's every single antibiotic you can take intravenous that will kill everything that's bacterial related in the body. Right. So because they don't know what it is yet. Okay. And it came back STD.
Jesus.
Dude. I'm kind of reliving it now in my head, but we got out of the hospital. We go back to the OB clinic to get the results because it started clearing up. Mm-hmm. So they released us. And the doctor looked at me in the OB clinic room and said, it's an STD. How did she get that? She's sitting over here. I'm sitting like where you are in a chair. She goes, it's an STD. How did she get that? And I just literally, I remember nothing from that point to arriving at my house and hitting the remote for the garage door to come up because we could park in the garage. Right. And I remember thinking to myself when I hit the remote thinking, I don't remember leaving the doctor's office. I don't remember packaging up the baby. I don't remember walking to the car. I don't remember getting in the car. I don't remember starting it up. I don't remember the 20-minute drive home. Wow. I don't remember pulling into my neighborhood. I don't remember pulling up and driving until that happened. Wow. And that's when I went, Bill, you're in blackout trauma. I remember telling myself that. And in the military, you're taught these things and how to handle them, and you have to force yourself through it. You have to get engaged. As soon as we got inside, the violence started. Wow. And right then I was like, what the hell did I get into? She knew it was her. She knew it was her. Mm-hmm. She knew it was. She knew I was figuring it out, sorting it out in my head. So for the next couple of weeks, I'm still I was asking myself the question, do I want to stay in a marriage in which she had sex while pregnant with my child? And then all the psychopathy started to come in of she's got a personality problem. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was dealing with. She turned the household into a living hell, dude. While holding the baby, she would never do this unless the baby was there because she knew my personality, I would not argue with her while she's holding the baby because I'm very familiar with childhood trauma, even as an infant. So I would never do that. Yeah. She always made sure the baby was there yelling at me, throwing stuff at me, calling me names. I want to move into the other room. I want to sleep in the other room. I don't want to sleep in the same bed with you. And I'm like, what the fuck? What she's doing is projection. Mm-hmm. She's trying to project upon me. I was the one that cheated, so therefore she's projecting it upon me. So I went, I'm going to the doctor. I got to see. I knew it wasn't me, but I'm like, I got to have the paperwork come back clean. Right. I come clean. It's her. No doubt. No doubt it's her. And then I started pulling in phone records. I started noticing she was connecting with this guy named Paul Volpe out of Seattle, Washington. And I went, what the fuck is going on here? What the hell is going on? And that's when it all started really getting, I was in absolute total denial, man. I didn't want the relationship to end. I was at the time a perfect white knight. And even my counselor said, Bill, you didn't do anything wrong. You're the perfect husband. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, I had to do something wrong to deserve this. Yeah. You know? And I was a perfect white knight, dude. You're looking at him. I am the watermark for white knights. And that is, I love Disney movies. I always wanted to be the prince to save the princess, you know. I wanted to be the paladin, you know, the chaotic good paladin that rode in, fought off the bad guy, saved the princess, swept her off her feet, took her back to my castle. That was in my head. I wanted the White House, you know, the house with the 2 cars in the driveway, the white picket fence, the mom, stay-at-home mom. I wanted all of that, and I worked like a pig, dude, because we went through 7 rounds of IVF. Wow. And they tested everything genetically. So you're looking at a genetically perfect white guy. I mean, if there's anybody you've ever met that has the receipts to say, oh no, I've got Indian in my background. No, dude, no. I am 100% pure white guy. Right. I mean, I've got the receipts, everything to show for it. And so there's no genetic defects with me. Yeah. And the doctors couldn't figure out why she wasn't getting pregnant. They've done every test in the world, and they found one small genetic defect, which later after the divorce I found out she knew about. It was her ability to ingest vitamin B, which infects the longevity of an embryo. The embryo won't stay. But then something else hit, and that is I started pulling, because I'm a digital forensic investigator, I started pulling forensic evidence from the images I had made just going through the marriage. I'm like, well, I'm going to make a digital forensic image in case the laptop crashes. I'm going to do a digital forensic image of your phone. Mm-hmm. And I found where she made trips to Texas. I found out where she was on phone calls to an MMA wrestler out of California. I found when I was out of town, I'd mapped when I was out of town and where she would go check into a hotel because there was a Wi-Fi connection I found forensically on her phone that said she had logged into that Residence Inn Wi-Fi. Well, you can't unless you're
present, right?
Unless you pay for a room,
right?
And I remember going through this, just going, what the fuck? Well, I was so caught up in working 90, 120-hour weeks, traveling 60 to 90% of the month to pay for this. IVF is cash, dude. Cash, like cash money. And we'd have talks about finances. We'd sit down and I was like, here's the finances, here's what's going on, here's what's coming in. And every time I'd pay cash, $35,000, $45,000, $15,000, $20,000, she would go, how are you getting the money? I'm like, I'm saving. I wouldn't spend money on me for hell. Right. You know, nothing. She got the best clothes, the best shoes. I got photographs. She's got an entire collection of CLs. She's got diamonds, rubies, pearls, emeralds, real stones. Because my cousin owns a jewelry store in Jacksonville, Hope Diamonds. By the way, go to Hope Diamonds, give her some business. She's out of Jacksonville, Florida. Give her a little plug for the family. I get nothing out of this, but I'm plugging family.
There you go.
But so she like gave me sweet deals, you know. So I would give her that for birthday, for Christmas. And then I started noticing as the relationship would go on, I was getting nothing for Christmas, nothing for my birthday. And so finally I just got mad at her. So remember what I say, I made talks about this, turning a red flag yellow, okay? I was turning red flags yellow. I was justifying why she wasn't doing it. Well, she's going through IVF, you know, the hormones and everything they give you really mess up a woman's system and her psyche. And, you know, we were going through all this. And so that's what I attributed it to. It's just a tough time. We'll get through this. After we have the kid, we'll get everything settled down, get everything back on track. You know, we're off track. Got to get everything back on track. But the goal is get the baby first. Once we get the baby, we'll get a house, we'll get everything. I just got to push work-wise, 90, 120-hour weeks, traveling 60 and 90% of the month. I just got to push through this. It's the athlete, it's the military in me just going, there's a finish line. You can't stop. I see it coming.
Yeah.
But then it hit me. She was having affairs while going through IVF. That's why the babies were aborting.
Wow.
And now I ask the question of, did she murder those transferred embryos?
Jesus Christ.
Because you can't have sex. Once you transfer, you got to have 3 months no sex. You can't, because they're in an unstable state. When they transfer the zygote, it's in an unstable state. And I'm sitting there, and that eats on me to this day, dude, is 2 boys, sons, didn't make it. They didn't have a chance. And I didn't understand that, And then when we transferred Savannah, my daughter, we also transferred a boy zygote. It didn't make it. And she said, well, that's probably the case. It was probably consumed. Now I'm thinking she was having sex in the first trimester and it killed. She was doing it intentionally, no doubt in my mind. And it just destroyed me. I mean, then she was putting a lot of pressure on me about moving. She wanted to move back to Atlanta to get back next to family. And I was consulting at the time. And I said, I don't have any problem. Well, that was 35 out of my pocket, 35 large out of my pocket.
Wow.
Got back. Savings were exhausted. Money in checking accounts exhausted. And then she started ramping up hell on the drive. I drove with little sleep. I did all the driving, all the packing, everything from Portland, Oregon to Atlanta, Georgia. Made it in 3 days because we had to meet the car carrier. And those guys were running dual shifts straight out. So it was like a foot race with a car carrier. Got back here. They missed us. They came back. They were gracious enough to come back, unloaded the car. Found a rental. We secured a rental over the internet and moved in. She turned the trip across the country into a living hell for me. And got back here. Furniture arrived. We're unpacking the house. She started ramping it up to the point to where I was on a daily basis reduced to tears. I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And I pinned myself in the back of the master closet where there's a lot of clothes and sound deadening, and I called an attorney friend of mine. I told him I was in tears, absolutely, totally destroyed. And he was like, dude, what the fuck's going on? I told him what's going on. He said, get the fuck out of the house. She's setting you up for a DV. I was like, what's a DV? He goes, domestic violence. Bill, get out of the house. You get out of the house or I'm going to show up a big clip. So years ago in Atlanta, I used to run security in a lot of the clubs. And Big Clip and I were like partnered up in this. And Big Clip's a super guy. Shout out to you, Big Clip. He's here in Atlanta and just a really amazing, awesome Christian man.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to call Big Clip and the boys. We're going to come by and kick your door and drag you out. You get out of that house right now. Leave right now. And I'm like, I ain't got money for a hotel room. I got money for air. Because exhausted it all coming across the country.
Right.
I had nothing. And I went, no, this ain't happening. This is really not happening. So I called Forsyth County Sheriff's Department. Forsyth County Sheriff's Department, you suck. And I said, I need a DV shelter. I need somewhere to go. And the lady says, well, there's nowhere for you to go. Get a hotel room. I'm like, what? And I said, what about, it says here, state of Georgia, by law, you have to give me DV counseling. She said, well, it's every Tuesday. You can go, but I wouldn't recommend it if I was you because only women go.
Wow.
And I went, what the fuck? There's nothing. My family wasn't stepping up. Not that they should have, but, I had nobody here. No family, no friends. I had friends, but it'd been a good 6 years since I touched base on because I just wasn't in town. Nowhere to go. And I just had to pull it together. I pulled up some money. I stayed in the hellhole for about another month and a half to where I just literally could not take it anymore. And I had enough to get an Airbnb. Got an Airbnb. A wonderful lady helped me get in settled up. And then I started noticing stuff happening, and I didn't understand what was happening. Later, I figured out that her family, it's called gang stalking is the term they use, where her family helped her stalk me. They put GPS tracking devices on my truck, broke into my truck, would sit outside my window. And I heard this, and I got it recorded. So if you guys deny it, I'm going to pull you in a deposition in the federal lawsuit. Go ahead and deny it. We'll file charges against you. Here it comes. I've never told anybody this on a podcast. Got a recording. Call my daughter on FaceTime. In the background, my brother-in-law was laughing. Yeah, he was crying in his room when I went by one night. The only way he would have known that, the only place I cried was by myself in that Airbnb. The only way he would have known that was if he was putting the tracker on my truck.
Right.
Now, he's a 2-time convicted felon of felony homicide, too.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, motherfucker, I'm going to put you in Reedsville State Prison. And I'm going to have the judge throw the book at your ass. You're going to never get out of prison, bitch ass motherfucker. And I'm like, I got zero compassion for anybody anymore. I mean, it destroys you as a man.
It does.
And,
It really does.
you know, they say there's one type of man that rebuilds himself. So at one time I was homeless and rebuilt myself. And there's a second type of man, an upper tier man that rebuilds himself twice. And I'm rebuilding myself a second time. So just so everybody knows, I'm paying so much in child support and alimony, okay, through violations of constitutional law, civil rights, and a violation of federal and state law by Judge Dickinson, Forsyth County Superior Court. He intentionally went out of his way to violate my rights. Your federal lawsuit's coming, Judge, in which the bankruptcy judge, because I had to file Chapter 7, not Chapter 13. I make 6 figures a year, dog. And when I filed Chapter 7, the bankruptcy judge, and he's going to be a witness, in court said, I've never seen, he's been sitting on the bench 20 years, I've never seen anybody pay this much in child support. Are you sure it's correct? I'm like, yes, sir. That's why I went out and hired a law firm that specializes in filing bankruptcy to make sure all the paperwork and everything was accurate. I said, yes, sir, it does. How much you paying? I was like, around $5,000 a month. He was like, what? I've sat on the bench 20 years. I've never seen anybody pay that much. Now, there was some in the rears. But I had no money to pay for that. I had to get an apartment. Yeah. I had to do truck repairs. I had to make payments to my attorney. I had no money.
Right.
You know, I had bills coming in. And my attorney basically threw the towel in for me. She showed up in court. That was it. Sat there and did nothing. I was asked illegal questions on the bench. She should have objected to. She didn't. She sat there like a bump on the log. I remember looking at her going, I remember thinking to myself, that's it. She put you out, let you be chum for the sharps, you know? And the judge, well, she asked, I forgot what the question was, but her attorney asked me one question. I was like, I'm not answering that question. That's like such a bizarre question. The judge says, Mr. Corbitt, you have to answer the question. And I went, no, I'll take my fifth. He goes, not in civil court. Yeah. Not in civil court. And I went, motherfucker. And I was just like, no, the answer was no.
How much did the attorney charge you?
Oh, overall, I spent well into 6 figures on the attorney, court filings, everything else. Dude, I was gassed. No money. As a matter of fact, when it was all over in bankruptcy, I had to put the bills I owed to her in the bankruptcy filing because no way I can pay it. Even now, I live paycheck to paycheck. Like, I got repairs on my truck to do. I talked to my boss about it on the phone prior to coming over. I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can make it. He's like, if you need the money, let me know. I don't know if I can get it to you, but I'll think of something. I'm like, well, I appreciate it. But I can't keep going. I can't go to my boss and say, I need $300 in truck parts that I have to turn the wrenches on myself, you know? So I took all that, and it took me a while to get psychologically over it. And I said, Bill, you have to warrior up. Yeah. You have to John Wayne the fuck up. And it's a term we use in the military. And when I John Wayne'd up, I realized I have to act like I was trained. So I was trained primarily as an OSI agent. That's where I have most of my time, but also counter-estimating as counterintelligence. And I worked special access programs out of AFOSI Region 7. You guys can Google it. Out of Crystal City, and I worked directly for Secretary of the Air Force. And I started investigating myself. I started investigating her, and that's when I found the multiple lovers. That's when I found who she was connecting with. I even reached out to one of them. I was like, dude, you need to come and testify for me. He's like, dude, it's over. Forget about it. And I'm like, no, dude. I got a little girl. It's not fucking over. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, you don't want to testify on my behalf. Here's the olive branch. Now when it goes civil proceedings and the dollar amounts approaching the federal status level, so that means federal filings. Why is federal so important? So everybody needs to make a mental note of. Federal is so important. Why? No conduct of privilege in federal court. I can remove all her privilege protections, and her attorney is going to get sued into abject poverty. I know she is. I know what her attorney did. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you how I do it. So make sure it's clear. I'm also an investigative reporter in Veteran Fathers, which means I'm protected by SHIELD laws. So I'm not going to give up my sources on that. But, oh, yeah, her attorney's guilty as flip. But I started putting it together, and I said, wait a minute. I walked into an ambush. I went face first into an ambush. I didn't understand about silver bullets. I got hit with a silver bullet. I didn't understand about these things, and we talked about the silver bullet before. You went through them yourself. Right. And I went, okay, how do I deal with this? I have to approach it like an investigator. These are bad guys. They're out to kill me. So I started putting the two and two together. But then I said, I got to do some field interviews to figure out if I'm the only one or if this is just a one-off case. So I went to veterans meetings, went to Kiwanis Club, and I was everywhere there were people gathering where I knew there would be men. I went there. I just asked, well, no, you're still married? No, I went through a divorce. How bad? Mine was horrible. Really? Mine was horrible. Mine was horrible. I'm like, wow. I went to talk to veterans. They're like, oh, yeah, they target veterans in Forsyth County. Well, let me hear from the other side of the table. So I called 14, I think it was 14, individuals and law firms that practice in family law in the state of Georgia, especially around the Atlanta metro, Fulton County, Forsyth County, Gwinnett County area. Yeah. And they all said, you got divorced in the worst county. Those two judges, Judge Dickinson and Judge Bagley, are they're called, literally, here's their nicknames, ready for this, the hangman and the assassin.
Wow.
You went in front of the two worst judges in the whole state. And I'm like, no way. I called a law firm. They said the same thing. Another law firm said the same thing. Called one law firm. The lady was very helpful, very cordial. And she said, if you were my client, I would have moved you to Fulton County before we filed. I'm like, why? She goes, they're more receptive to single fathers in those courts. And I was sitting there, and I remember thinking to myself, I literally walked into an ambush.
Yeah.
Well, when I filed for a divorce, I sat her down and I said, I want a divorce. I'm going to do the filings. Here's what I'll do. But you and I should talk this out. We shouldn't involve attorneys. She was holding the little baby. At the time, the baby was like 14 months. No, wasn't even a year. Wasn't even a year yet. Okay. So we had her first birthday here at the house. Mm-hmm. And she said she jumped up while holding my child. Remember, she would never do this when the child wasn't there because she knew I would just go off.
Right.
Spun around, pointed her finger at me. I'll never forget it. It's like a video playing in my head and said, fuck you. I'm going to take you to court and get everything you own. There's a fucking thing you can do about it. And I went, what the fuck did I marry? That's when I found out, and I started connecting dots, putting all together the forensic data. She had planned to divorce me 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
2 years.
She was planning for it.
And what she was waiting for was the child.
Yeah.
Well, as I was packing up and moving stuff out, I found a psychological evaluation. So just so everybody knows, my ex-wife has been professionally diagnosed with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. She's in the cluster B spectrum. So when I say I have 14 years independent field study plus 5 years, now going on 6 years of independent research dealing with personality defects, especially cluster B NPDs, yes, you're looking at an expert in the field because I surpass all the other predefined criteria. I just haven't published, which I will publish on this. Right. Excuse me. But going through that, and I found that I didn't understand what NPD was. So I started asking her questions while I was still living there. I started like, here's an online personality test. I've taken it and I passed. Now, to let everybody know, because I did special access programs, I was briefed, and for those veterans out there that may listen to the recording or may be on the live session, you have to understand, at the time I was briefed TSSCI, and I had TSSCI tickets. So SCI secret compartmentalized information. I had tickets. I had 7 tickets, which is up there. But then I was briefed special access level 4D waived, which means you don't get, very few people get above waived. There's a couple other caveats up there. Program based is above waived. So that's like the top zeros. Here's to give you an idea. The top 0.0003% of civilians and military get briefed that high.
Wow.
Well, what do you have to do to get briefed? You have to go through personality interviews, personality testing, polygraph examinations. They put you through the ringer. 0 personality defects. Wow. Matter of fact, the Air Force wanted to interview me about why I was so psychologically stable. What was my background, my history, my family. They wanted to know all this because they wanted to pick more military active duty people who were psychologically stable to brief them up this high. And so I got tickets that I'm saying. Okay. Now I'm saying, living with someone with cluster B, that I didn't understand NPD. So I'd ask her, hey, I took an online personality test, passed it with flying colors. Why don't you take it? Wouldn't come near it, started getting angry as hell, throwing stuff at me. That now culminated to one night she chased me out to my truck after the baby was asleep, chased me out to my truck with a kitchen knife trying to kill me. And that's when I realized this goes beyond tonight. This goes back. And I remember specifically coming in from travel when we lived in close to Peachtree City. I can't remember the city right now. There's a little suburb outside of Peachtree City, between Peachtree City and the airport. And we had a house there. And I remember I come home and she had made pot roast. And part of it was eaten. And I said, do you want some of the pot roast? She goes, no, I've already eaten. And I ate it and I got violently ill. So much to the point I wanted to go to the emergency room. Well, she wouldn't let me. She said, it'll pass. Don't worry about it. And I honestly believe.
You think she poisoned you?
Yes, I really do.
Wow.
I really do. Now, I got over it, but I never ate that pot roast, and we ended up throwing it out. I'm like, something's wrong with that pot roast. But it was cooked. It tasted good, and I just was like, what the hell is... And I just turned a red flag yellow. And I just went over it, and just moved on. One other instance when we lived there, I wanted to take her car down to the local car wash and get it washed one day. Just doing something nice for your wife. And she lost her mind. And then I found out she was fucking a guy at the car wash.
Wow.
Okay. Now, talk about marriage through deception. Let's talk about this real quick. Before we got married, we sat down at a table, 1-to-1. And I said, tell me about your background. I'll tell you about mine. No holds barred. Let's get it all. Let's lay it out. I was very serious about this. And I said, you ever have threesomes? She said, I have one. I said, okay. And we talked about, my sexual background, stuff like that. Got to court. Oh, it was not just a threesome. She had a 2.5-year polyamorous relationship with a husband and wife couple, and I'm not going to name the business, that owns a porn shop here in Atlanta. It's very famous. That porn shop has a glory hole.
I think I know what you may be talking about.
Okay?
This is crazy.
Dude,
Wow.
it's insane.
Wow.
Okay, the glory hole. She participated and was compensated. I'm not making this up, dude.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Bill. This is one of the wildest things I've ever.
Dude,
I've
I'm
heard.
sharing more
I've
with
heard.
you about what happened, what come out in the divorce, than I have in any other podcast. Okay?
And I really appreciate that. I won't lie to you, Bill. I've talked to a lot of people, and I've heard some of the craziest stories, including my own.
Yeah.
This is by far
Dude.
worse.
I've heard worse. I've heard worse than fathers.
Really?
Oh my God. I think mine's bad. No, dude. There's absolute horror stories. I'm surprised these veterans, most of them are veteran fathers. And I didn't understand the connection.
What do you think that targets veterans so much?
Benefits. She gets full access to all my benefits. Now, it doesn't take anything off my plate, but it puts an additional burden on the taxpayer. Full benefits. VA.
But don't she get it if you guys are still married? If you guys are still married, don't she get the benefit? So she get full benefit after the divorce. That's crazy.
It's insane, dude. That's where a lot of Americans, they don't understand why veterans are so heavily targeted during family court and child custody proceedings. Yeah. Heavily targeted. We're targeted intentionally. I mean, this judge went out of his way to violate constitutional law, violate my civil rights, violate federal and state law. Went out of his way to do it and did it like he's done it before. That's when it started clicking in my head. I'm like, wait a minute. He's doing this too flippantly, too haphazardly.
Yeah.
Like, I got him recorded, in which he said, I'm going to go back and review these financials. On the financials is my VA disability. It should not be there. Yeah. He should have struck through that. He didn't. She gets half my VA. That's a violation of federal law.
Right.
She gets half my VA. What the fuck?
That's insane.
Now, let me level set this with all veterans out there. Here's where I am with your ex-wife getting your VA. If she is your veteran spouse, in other words, she served with you, and you go through a divorce, I ain't got no problem with that. That's just the way it is.
Right.
Because I feel, just my personal belief, if she served with you, she's your veteran spouse, yeah, she should be able to get some of that VA benefit, but not 50%.
Yeah.
Sorry. And it's disability. It means injuries I occurred while on active duty. Okay? My first wife, 0. She didn't want anything. We had a very amicable divorce.
Yeah.
Okay. Second wife, she got it all, baby. And stuck me with 100% of the debt, which is another violation of federal law.
Wow.
Isn't it?
See, what I don't understand is why are they giving her all these benefits after the divorce? Why not during the marriage?
It's just the way the VA structure works. And that's what a lot of veterans don't understand. So she wasn't my active duty spouse. Okay, that was my first marriage. Second marriage, I get the benefits because I'm the veteran, not her. Okay, but she gets to participate in a part of the benefits. Let me explain this. So if I got a house, I go get a VA loan. Okay, she's being my spouse would participate in that. But after the separation and divorce, the VA well, the way Judge Dickinson looked at it was, yeah, she gets half. Well, the VA looks at it that way too. But they're not allowed, as a violation of federal law, for them to get access to my disability payments. That's a no-no. It's clearly defined in law. And Judge Dickinson to give a flying fuck.
You say his name is Judge Dickinson?
Dickinson. Yeah, you can look him up on Judge Dickinson, Forsyth County Superior Court. He's still sitting. The bench, he's a gubernatorial appointee. He's been on there for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what county is this?
Forsyth County.
Yeah, that sounds bad. That's like going towards Macon, right?
That's up towards, so here, it's northwest from here.
Okay.
You're at Beaver Ruin.
Right.
So it's north. You have to go north on 85 and then cut back roads across to get to Forsyth County.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're northwest a bit.
Push this.
Yeah. So now I've got all that. And I got all this information that other vets have been hit hard too.
Yeah.
So I'm in the IT field. I got together all my IT buddies that would volunteer. And a lot of them are some of the most brilliant men I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
And guys, thank you for helping us out. So we come up with a strategy to pull together all the data about fathers' rights, men's rights movements, publications, data. We created pseudonyms. We dropped into the MGTOW, dropped into the Red Pill. We started following fathers' rights advocates, men's rights advocates, learning the market. And then I learned about MGTOW. I learned about Red Pill. I learned stuff. Then I learned, wait a minute, there's a lot of dads out there that are getting screwed in the court. Now, here's what I'm going to say to you ladies that listen to this podcast. God bless you and all the work you've done. You've done amazing work. You've got laws that support you. You've got law enforcement that supports you. Men don't have shit.
Nothing.
Not a damn thing.
Yeah, nothing.
So don't get mad at me for advocating for fathers and men. Get mad at women for not advocating for equal treatment under the law. And I always say proper administration of the law, level playing field.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your gender is. Like when you were born. Do you remember this? When you showed up, God was up there. God went, okay, Mustafa, do you want to be a white boy, an Asian girl, or a black man born in Africa?
You didn't get a choice.
And you went, I want that black guy born in Africa. You know, when I showed up, God was like, okay, Bill, what do you want? I'm like, I want that white dude. All right. We had no choice in the matter.
Right, exactly.
We had no choice in the matter.
Exactly.
You know, and that's why I tell people we're veteran fathers. It's only an homage to the veterans to help form the nonprofit. It's showing them respect. That's it. We're out there for all men and fathers and our children. Our children. So every time a father doesn't get support, doesn't get help, who suffers the most? The child.
Yeah, absolutely.
The child does. How abusive can you be as a human being? How can you look at yourself in the mirror and now go, fathers don't need help. Fathers don't need this. I'm like, what a toxic fucking life you must have.
And I always say this, to be honest, if you have that type of mindset to trying to hurt the father of your child,
sadistic.
You know, if that's how you think, to be honest, you don't care for your kids.
No, you don't care for children.
Yeah.
Just
Period.
children.
Exactly.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care.
Yeah.
When I look at a child, I don't care who the dad is.
Yeah.
I don't care who the mother is. Is the child being taken care of? Is the child doing good? Child being raised right? Like my little girl, I got videos I posted on my personal Instagram. You ready for this? All her friends are of color. They're either Indian or black. She does have some white friends. But I've got her picture holding hands, playing, walking off. And I'm so proud of this little girl because where do children learn bigotry and hatred? The adults in their life.
Yeah, somebody got to teach them. Right.
Yeah. My child doesn't give a damn. She's a little girl.
Yeah.
She's a kid. She just wants someone fun to play with.
Right.
Her two best friends, Gloria and Siama, live next to me. She says, those are my sisters. I'm like, you go, girl. Gloria and Siama call me Uncle.
Yeah.
Uncle Bill. Okay? Beautiful kids. Beautiful kids. Love them to death. Their mother's from Congo.
Okay.
Okay.
My mother's from Congo.
Yeah, she's from Congo. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care who you are. I never have. I never grew up in a racial household.
Right.
I never grew up racially bigoted because I grew up as a military brat. My father was like, there's only one color, Air Force blue.
That's it.
That's it. And that's what I brought into Veteran Fathers. Yeah. And I absolutely forbid anybody to come in here and segregate us based on race, color, religion, national origin. Yeah. I absolutely forbid it. I will lose my shit, and I will not be nice because there's no need for it. What we're doing is about children. Exactly. It boils down to kids.
Yeah.
And if people don't see that, and you listen to them, I got haters.
Yeah.
They come out, oh, he's forming a cult. Screen capture. You're going to come up later. I'm going to come visit you, and I'm going to post this.
Exactly.
And you're going to apologize to my face on camera.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a bigot. He hates women. I'm like, that's okay. Screen capture, screen capture, screen capture, screen capture. Because what you're hearing is projection.
Yeah.
And what you're hearing that projection from is people who have personality defects. Here's how you handle them. Alienate them. Put them out on, and I say this all the time, peer pressure. Put them out on Leper Island. Don't associate with them. Don't recognize the fact they're alive. Put them out there to die.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get off Leper Island? You work your ass off. How do you work your ass off, Bill Corbitt? You volunteer and donate, and you work. And here's what happens. Most of them will start, and they stop. I'm like, yeah. Because you want people to give you forgiveness.
Right.
Here's the way I look at forgiveness. Okay, so I'm Catholic. I'm a Christian man. If forgiveness was godly, here's something for you to think about and blow your mind. You ready for this? If forgiveness was godly, the devil would be seated next to God.
That's the truth, though.
It's true.
That's facts. Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Remember, before the devil was cast out of heaven, he was the most beautiful angel in heaven.
That's what the Bible said.
God gave him everything.
Yeah.
God loved Satan.
Yeah.
Like no other angel ever. And Satan turned against him.
Yeah.
And where did St. Michael? So God went to his number 2 guy, St. Michael, and he says, I'm going to give you all my power and all my weapons.
Yeah.
Form an army and cast Satan and all his demons out of heaven. I will curse them. Where did he send them?
On earth.
To earth.
Yeah.
We're living in hell.
Yeah.
And when I look at these people, I deal with religious leaders, and they're like, Bill, don't give up. I'm like, why? The people that are, and I get emotional when I think about this, sorry. People that are close to God, that are on a mission from God, are the ones the devil will attack the
most.
First.
Exactly.
And the most.
Absolutely.
You can't give up. You can't lose it.
Yeah. That's something my mother always tells. She tells me, as a matter of fact, even last night, she was telling me that because our divorce has been finalized almost a year now. I'm still going through it.
Yeah, you never stop.
I'm still going through it. I remember one day I'd say, you know what? I'm at a point where if she wants to have the kids, she can have them. I have a platform. Sooner or later, they will find me.
Yeah.
But she told me, if you leave those kids, you will regret it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm still fighting for them.
And I remember, so I have a picture that's on my
What is that noise? That's
outside his car alarm.
Okay.
Yeah, car alarm.
Okay.
But I got a picture on my wall that was on my screen from my iPhone. And I remember I was in Airbnb, and I remember sitting on the floor, and I had the in my mouth, and I was putting pressure on the trigger. I was ready to just end it. Prior to this, I had a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, commit suicide. And I never understood, and I had veteran buddies of mine commit sideways, and I never understood why they would do that, because it hurts everybody around you that's still alive. Hurts everybody.
Yeah.
Until I was at that point where there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I was in such extreme depression, darkness. Nobody's helping. Nowhere for me to turn for help. Yeah. Everybody's against me, and nothing I'm doing is saving me. Yeah. And I remember, and I have, it's called a hammerless gun. I actually have it with me now. The same weapon, and it was in my mouth, and I was putting pressure on the trigger. It went past the first detent. In other words, the safety's off. The next thing is the hammer's falling on the primer. Yeah. And my phone went off, and it lit up the room. Wow. And I looked down, and on my phone is that picture of my little girl. Wow. She's sorry. It's a picture of her holding my finger. Wow. We took pictures of her when she was real little, and she's looking up at Daddy with this beautiful smile on her beautiful eyes. And I looked at it. There was no message. There was no email. There was no reason for that phone to go off. Wow. And that's when I realized my ex wants me dead so she can move her lover in as my daughter's father. And my daughter will never know who her daddy is. Yeah. And, having gone through that, and you've gone through that, you never get over it. You always live through it.
Yeah.
And anytime it comes up, it's like you're
living that moment.
You remember all those emotions, everything comes flooding back, and it's very difficult to talk through, but I think it's very important for men to understand you're not alone.
Yeah.
Men fight through this successfully. You can get through it. And yeah, it sucks. It sucks ass.
Yeah.
There's no one going to be there for you until we come along with this nonprofit.
Exactly.
And that's when we started putting together a nonprofit. And we're on a Zoom calls. We're doing them once a week. Then it went to once a month. And finally I just got so frustrated on one call. I hung up. I was like, fuck this shit. We just need to sue their asses. And I hung up. No, the call come around and jumped on. I'm like depressed, can't figure out what we need to do. A lot of nonprofits doing other things. And one of the guys went, I'm like, okay, this call's about answers. What do we do? And one of the guys went, Bill, you said it. I was like, what did I say? I say crazy shit all the time. What did I say? We have to sue them. Men aren't suing.
That's what it is.
And I went, what? And we looked at all the nonprofits over the last month, Bill, all the men's rights activists, all the men's rights nonprofits globally. Mm-hmm. Nobody's suing. And I'm like, it can't be that damn easy. When it is, the National Organization of Women and all their affiliates and all the lawsuits that are connected with women's rights, there's around 500. And they've all won. They were all wins. There's only 2 for men. And those are recent.
Yeah.
Only 2. And I went, holy shit, that's our model. So we built a model. We have 2 primary attack lanes. One is to wage lawfare for fathers and children, to sue the courts. And I'll often say this, I make no bones about it, is to sue them civilly into abject poverty. And if there's enough through civil proceedings, subpoenas and everything else, we have enough to form a criminal suit, we'll file criminally against the attorney, officer of the court, or the judge.
The judge, right.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of people when talking about suing a judge, like, oh, you'll never sue a judge. You can't get their judicial immunity removed. What idiot told you that? Yeah. That's a damn lie. Then it hit me. I'm working against the PSYOP. That's crazy, isn't it? People are being told a lie. They believe. Remember, lie go around the earth 4 times before the truth gets out of bed.
Right.
People have been told this lie for a long time. I was like, no. There are judges that on the sly will call me up like, you're doing the right thing, don't stop. One's still sitting. You're doing the right thing, don't stop, doing the right thing. And I asked him, I was like, judge, get their immunity removed? He goes, oh yeah. A judge lives in fear of getting immunity revoked, but also lives in fear that their prior ruling will get challenged, and now it's a win.
Yeah.
It reflects poorly upon their record.
That's when you appeal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I looked into appeals. So every father listening to this, understand, if you appeal your divorce case, there's over a 90% loss rate. So what's the solution? Take it out of family court. Go civilly or criminally. You have to take it out of family court. I keep telling fathers all the time, take it out of family court. I was talking with Jim Sisko. Okay, he's a Mersaug, well-known, very famous Judge Man. Ruled against him, violated numerous federal laws, numerous constitutional rights violations. He got promoted. He sits now at the Court of Appeals in Virginia. I'm like, he has a mental disorder. How in the hell? So I did a test. I said, and this is why we're still building everything. I did a test. There's a way you can file a complaint against a judge, and there's supposed to be a judicial review body to review the complaint and investigate it. 0. And I did it intentionally. I provided minimal information on the complaint to do nothing more, to start the investigation, to see if I would get one of the judicial investigators to call me and sit down with me. I had all the evidence lined up.
Right.
Not one phone call, not one email, nothing. And they sent me a nice letter saying, oh, if you feel it wrong, you can appeal it. I'm like, with a 90% loss rate, you want me to appeal it? That's when it hit me, and I started sniffing around. They don't hold, they, being legal professionals, do not hold their own accountable. They don't police their own. Yeah. Okay, so what's the solution? And I did another podcast with attorneys. You know, they said, what's your answer? I said, all the Georgia bar, every state bar needs to go away. It needs to be absolutely, totally dissolved, go away. These judicial and attorney review boards that receive these complaints needs to be dissolved. Private body of citizens, private citizens, not affiliated or connected with a political group or the judge. Between 5 to 7 citizens needs to be formed. A private group of citizens with legal oversight. You need legal oversight. So in case they're like, hey, we want to do this, you can't. It's against the law. You can't do that.
Right.
That's when you get reform. That's when you get fixes. That's when you get judges put in a federal penitentiary. That's when you get judges defrocked and removed from the bench.
Can we silent that? Because I don't want it to keep getting on the.
Yeah, I'll take it off. But that's where you get. So here in Atlanta recently, it hit all the news. We had a magistrate judge, the highest paying judge in Georgia, behaved badly with law enforcement officers. She got removed. That's the wrong question. The judicial regulatory body stepped in and removed her from the bench. That's the wrong question. The proper question is, how long has she been doing this and more and not been adjudicated against? People don't do this unless it's repeated behavior that's been rewarded or ignored.
Yeah.
So she has propensity.
Yeah.
How can that go? She did that. She did that like, I dare you to arrest me. I dare you to touch me. I'm not doing that. A real big attitude. I'm like, what? She's too confident in it. She's done it before. And got away with it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Okay, let's talk a little bit about politics real quick.
Yes, go ahead.
So we got politics. We got the judicial branch of our government, 3 branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative. The judicial branch of our government is now acting like a political power arm. Okay? All right, it's out of control. How do we fix the country? We got communists in office. We got communists in Congress, okay? Strong communists. Chi-Com, some of them are Russian communists. They're taking bribes and kickbacks.
Yeah.
You know, Abscan was an investigation by the FBI where caught congressmen and senators taking bribes and kickbacks. That was back in the 80s. Hasn't been one since. Why? We can't trust the FBI anymore. Can't trust Secret Service anymore. We can't trust our own federal agencies that have the sole mission to guard us against these corrupt legislators. So we can't trust them anymore. So how do we fix this country? We have to get back control of the courts. So I looked at it as a tactician. If I'm attacking an enemy, where is he the strongest? You don't attack there. You attack where they're the weakest and the most exposed. Where are the courts the weakest and most exposed? Family court and child custody. That's where they have gone out of their way to violate the most rights against not acting in best interest of the child. Not acting in best interest of the child.
Yeah.
You start putting those judges in federal penitentiaries. You start getting attorneys get their law degrees revoked and get them banned for practicing law in the country. You start putting law enforcement officers, I'm sorry to say this, Leo, but you guys have violated laws too. Put them in prison. Guess what's going to happen? That's going to, it's called a ripple effect. You can look it up. It's a physics theorem. Essentially, it ripples. Where does it go? Now it goes into civil and criminal courts. Now it bleeds over into the legislative and executive branches.
Yeah.
See where the power of this goes? You have to start in the courts, and you have to start with family court child custody.
So what are the likelihood of making that happen?
Very good. Very good, actually. We're right now in conversations with a couple of law firms. Great transition, by the way. Great segue. So we're talking about our two swim lanes earlier. One's the lawfare lane. The other one's the domestic violence shelter lane. Right now, we've finished, it's over a 100-page document of a litigation strategy document to sue the state of Georgia, essentially as close to poverty as we can. There's no DV shelters in the state of Georgia. They've gone since 1972. I haven't even tried to start one. I have if you look on my Twitter feed, I've got Georgia representatives and Congress people now start paying attention like, oh, shit. Oh, my God. This guy's making a lot of freaking noise. And here's why. There's laws on the book that says, hey, state of Georgia, you can't do this. Here's a complaint. Well, you never asked. Take it off the table. That's not a legal argument. I won't hear it in my court.
Right.
Here's why. It's case law behind that. Oops. So we got the state of Georgia by the short and curlies. Here's how much we're asking for. $20 million in emergency injunctive relief. Why is that important? One, it helps the DV shelter get up, but also helps fight the battle. Because civil lawsuits against the state of Georgia, you can plan on about a 5-year battle. Okay, they're going to want to capitulate. They're going to want to settle. No. I need case law. And I've told the attorneys this. We're going to battle this all the way to jury. Yeah. And they're like, oh, dude, that's a long fight. I'm like, I don't care. Because once we file, it'll spread globally. We've started. And now I've got professional firms stepped up. I've got national desk producers with the mainstream media outlets stepped up. It's like, you file. Yeah. We'll put this on the national desk and it'll be carried by every affiliate in the country. I've got professional consulting and PR firms that have stepped up. We'll help you. Get it started. We'll volunteer. Experts in their field, slobbering at
waiting
the bit to help. Like, Get a firm to champion. Get a firm to file.
Right.
I've had law firms review the litigation summary document. They're like, okay, we wouldn't necessarily follow this strategy. We understand why you built it, why it follows this strategy. Mm-hmm. Excellent document. Excellent document. I'm like, wow. Law firms reviewed it. Excellent document. People in the field who supported the lawsuits, same comment and feedback. I'm like, okay, all right. So we're on the right track. We did the right thing. We did the right research. But through doing this, we've developed other lawsuits against the state of Georgia. And here's why 20 million emergency injunctive relief is so important. I've talked to House members. I've talked to State House and State Senate members. Mm-hmm. Here's what they told me. Good luck, Bill. It's not in the budget for this year, not in the budget for next year. If it does get in the budget and I can sneak it in somewhere, by the time it hits the House floor, the feminists, the neo-Marxists, the Marxists here in Georgia, communists, will vote against it and won't see the light of day. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. I now know we have to sue state of Georgia. You can't bankrupt the state, but I say that. You can only send them into default. The federal government can step in and save them. Mm-hmm. Now, to bankrupt state of Georgia, we're talking like billions of dollars. State of Georgia has great GDP. Okay, $20 million injunctive relief. The judge signs that, passes it over to the governor and state legislature and says, here, pay. They have to. They don't have a choice now. They have to dig through the budget, find $20 million within 90 or 120 days, whatever the judge says you have to find. And they have to pay us.
Yeah.
Boom. Transfer the money into our account. Let's get rolling.